Well, welcome back to the Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You podcast. My name is Sean Langwell, and I am your host. And if you like honest, vulnerable, and real stories about what it takes to not only become great, but self-confident and bold enough to be yourself, then this show is for you. Each of my guests started out as ordinary people like you and me, but have accomplished extraordinary things in their lives to be considered great masters or experts at what they have been called to do. And that is totally subjective. Join me each episode for inspiring, encouraging, and meaningful conversations with diverse people from all walks of life and industry. Leaders and brave individuals who offer unique insights into the fields of arts, entertainment, business, finance, technology, healthcare, sports, psychology, recovery, self-improvement, personal growth, and so much more. Whether you are in the same fields as my guests or not, I guarantee you will walk away from each episode feeling better about yourself and inspired to take the next bold step toward your own goals and aspirations. Your life will improve if you dare to be great and dare to be you. And I have a very special friend of mine, a colleague, a fellow writer from our the California Writers Club, Redwood branch up in Santa Rosa by the name of Curtis Moran, J. Curtis Moran. Curtis has recently written and published a book called Lost and Found, Coming of Age, Coming Clean. It is in Barnes and Noble in the dysfunctional family/relationship section, as well as Amazon. Look it up. We're going to talk a little bit about that and that process. So, every writer's experiences can influence a novel's storyline and characters. Curtis's struggles, plus those of his characters, including homelessness, addiction, sexual and domestic abuse, might inspire readers to look into their own lives as local resources. He returned to San Francisco State University to do postgraduate work in screenwriting and believing his stories should entertain even when they might enlighten and empower. He converted his trilogy into a novel, the trilogy being three separate screenplays. That actually allowed him to go deeper into the lives and psyches of his original characters. Now living in Santa Rosa with his husband, Dr. Charles Roth, PhD, and working a few days a week in the wellness department at Oliver's Markets, he shares what he knows about nutrition. As well, he offers assistance to organizations such as Verity, a rape crisis service in Santa Rosa, whose mission is to help people recover and find peace and harmony in their lives. And by virtue of your bio, you qualify for this show. So welcome, Curtis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to be able to be part of your broadcast. So thank you.
Well, and part of the reason I wanted to have you on the show is, folks, this is going to be an audio, but I'm also going to put the video out here. And it's not ageism, but I keep forgetting Curtis is 82 years old, and you've just published your first book. And that anybody out there who is, and I do this on occasion. I got Tommy Whitener who's going to be on in a couple weeks as well. Uh, you know, it's never too late to write a book, right?
And they don't have to be autobiographies. They can be fiction. And I like to tell people that it's my book is pure fiction and every word is true. And because I use fiction as the category, I can get away with telling the truth better than if I'm, following the dogmatic path of the family history.
And let's talk about that because there's a lot of people, every single person we know has multiple stories to tell. It's been heard
Mhm.
and said many times that, there's all of us have 100 books or so in us. And most people, 95% or so, have aspirations of wanting to write a book. Most never will. So let's talk about your choice of choosing to fictionalize this. And we can go as deep as you want, but you had, four major things here that surface in various forms in this book. I did read it, but talk a little bit about why you chose to do this fictionalized, besides just protecting your own life, but protecting innocence, if you will. Talk about that for a little bit.
Uh, Going back to SF State, uh, I realized that I didn't know how to really do a screenplay. And I wanted to take my mom's story and put it into a drama because she was rather on the dramatic side. And So enrolling at State had several very good professors that, in fact, they chose my first screenplay to be submitted in behalf of the university to one of the more prestigious contests. I've submitted all 5 of my feature-length screenplays to various um, competitions. And one of my professors, Dr. Joe McBride, said, you know, your trilogy, the last 3 of the 5, really should be a novel because you want to go deeper into these characters, which you don't really get to do in a screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, one of my professor's assistants said, oh, Curtis, you write like a novelist. And so I turned that complaint into an asset because in a novel, you really do need to delve deeper. And that's what I've done. The original screenplays had very nice comments generally. Um, and at the same time, with the trilogy, the last 3, one linked to the next. And so it really did make sense to finally put it together in a book. And it's divided into 3 parts, but it does flow. So,
Go ahead and hold up the cover again so we get a good long shot on it, because
oh,
it's a quick read. The characters you fall in love with and you get to feel the tension. So let's talk about the screenplay. You had a trilogy and you wanted to go deeper. And the initial question was really, how do you incorporate some of the hard stuff, whether it's homelessness, abuse, uh, uh, addiction? How are you able
sure.
to have the creative license in doing this, just for the novice novelist or memoirist out there who's considering writing their book? Because that is a block for a lot of people. They don't want to talk, they don't want to point fingers at somebody if they're still living. And there's also a story that's been gnawing at them for so long. So talk a little bit about
Yeah.
how you draw upon the real stuff, because it's a true story, but you fictionalize it. It's fictionalized
Yeah.
memoir, which is a great creative writing technique, creative nonfiction, if you will.
One sentence, you need to
Oh,
get
you
over
have as many
yours.
sentences you want.
But the key is you have to get over yourself. You don't know everything. And so I believe that you need to share part of your manuscript. Don't unload the entire document on someone who um, may not want to invest the time to read your entire story. And that, so what I did was gave the introductory uh, part of my manuscript to customers I met through Oliver's. And wouldn't you know, 1 in 3 women are abused, sexually abused by the time they're 18, and
That's
1 in
frightening.
6 men. I had no idea it was this rampant a problem. So, what happens when you share your material with people who really know from the inside what's going on? It means you need to become and will become a good reporter. And so,
Mhm.
even if you're calling it fiction, oh boy, you're really just going into real people's lives. My husband's work in family court, he dealt with parents who would rather win and um, not do the right thing for their children. And I needed a little encouragement. You mean parents are this stupid or this self-absorbed that they don't look after the welfare of the children? So that plus actually letting women who would be willing to read the parts. And so I modified my story. The very first introduction you get to Terry in the very first chapter, you meet a woman that is a very bad mom. How could this be? And one of the women said, you need to give the reader hope that she's actually someone that you want to cheer for, that, or at least you
Mhm.
want to understand why she's having an affair instead of being with her would-be husband. She never wanted to get married in the first place. So how do you reconcile that? So you have to build your story so that people will be happy to read your book. And like Sean said, it's a good read. My former wife uh, in 4 days, read the whole thing. Others take their time and take longer, which is fine.
But it's important to I don't want to gloss over this with Terry, who has a lot of the characteristics as you shared with me personally before I even read the book of your upbringing with your
Yeah.
mom, of having the narrative arc. And what that customer or that woman did for you is to have a good novel, to have a good story, there has to be some narrative arc that is an existing state now, and the struggles, either the backstory that put them there, so you have some empathy with the character, but then
Yes.
moving forward to
Yep.
watch the progression. Because if it's just staying there and you're just spilling out facts, and this is important, you know this, but for our listening audience, if you're planning on writing a memoir, you can do it a whole bunch of different ways. I'm going to just say right here, go read a book on how to write a memoir and attend a class and join a writing club so that you understand,
Mhm.
and read a few, whether it's Isabel Allende or whoever. Read Cheryl Strayed's book. I forgot the name of it. I just drew a blank, but you know which one I'm talking about. But read that book because it'll give you an idea of what the narrative arc looks like. So for Terry, um, how did you punish her? There's this term about punishing the characters, but how did you give her hope? Because there's some built up resentment in there that you don't necessarily want to have a happy ending, right?
Well, besides cheating on the man in her life, she
Mm.
ultimately plots to get child support, never tells her son, Ryan is his name, that his father loves him and he's sending money anyway. He is in the dark about that. All he knows is that he left and she wants it that way. So, why would she be this way? Well, later, because I listened to my readers later in the story, talk about arc, we have her in a class of social workers where she's being interviewed as a successful example for someone who's recovering from her drug addiction, her um, sexual abuse trauma that she had as a girl. And, and we didn't know that in the beginning. I was
It's
told,
an effective way to do it. You did a great
mhm,
job of it because some people will feel the inclination to want to give the backstory up front because you need to bring the character now. But part of the
yeah,
joy of reading is to say, okay, well, why is this person there? And it doesn't have to happen in the first three chapters, right? I mean, you
right.
don't reveal that about Terry until the last third of the book, if I remember correctly.
That's exactly right. I had one woman who I thought would be good in understanding what will be a future book based in World War II. She's old enough to have lived in Nazi occupied Paris. She read the book, she had librarian experience, and she threw it into the shopping cart and said, "This is disgusting." I thought, well, that's quite a succinct review for my book. And she said, "And that happened to me." So
Mm.
that was what was going on. So in a way, it was my best review because it touched so deeply in her life, and and she just wanted a fun novel. She didn't want a story that would really stir up the material in her life. And I assure readers that it gives them hope because she's willing to admit the need for change. And so Terry has a support person, an African American roommate in her recovery program, who gives her the appropriate support. And even Sean, who is her former partner, um, comes around to giving her support. So the reader does get I think, the clear impression that, yeah, you can actually recover from these things.
So in writing this, it's easier because I wrote a memoir about my recovery journey, and it was
Mhm.
really hard to go back and relive some of those traumas, some similar traumas that you talked about in Lost and Found. Not exactly, but the recovery aspect and some of that. But um, even though you're writing fiction, there still needs to be, and it's actually equally important, in my opinion, to have the emotional evocativeness and the pull. to grab
Hmm.
the heartstrings, to have something that is meaningful to the reader. But as an author, because there's going to be authors that listen to this podcast, how do you tap into that? And is it easier for you to tap into it and process the emotions that are based on fact to fictionalize them, or was it still a challenge for you?
Hmm. The the experience in writing screenplays allows me as the writer to have different points of view, um, inflicting in
Hmm.
such a way that it's real life. So we have characters who will say things that aren't my personal belief. At the same time, I know people have different views in politics. So the mother and daughter relationship, uh, the bishop's wife, she divorced her bishop husband, is a Trump supporter.
Hmm.
And Terry doesn't want to deal with any of that. But the daughter, Robin, makes it very clear that she sides with her father, the bishop up in Portland, and will say things that I hear from customers, from real people. So I find that calling it fiction is just a convenient way for me to get away with saying things that otherwise wouldn't. For example, when my husband said, "Oh, give the book to the pastor of our Episcopal church here in Santa Rosa," and I said, uh, "But it has the F word 23 times." Well, he had no problem understanding this is how people communicate.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about an 18-year-old coming of age, coming clean. That's the mom. They don't just say it like in Gone with the Wind. He didn't say, frankly, I don't give a darn.
Right.
He said it the way we hear it in the script. And that's because our, I think our job as writers is to speak the truth. And it
Yep.
isn't always convenient or easy.
So was it challenging though in talking about some of these hard things? Because you've shared off air some of the stuff that was traumatic for you in
Oh,
tapping into the character side, what
yeah.
on a personalized level, scripts and manuscript aside, what was that like for you to process some of the emotion?
Cathartic and refreshing, both, to be able to um, bring to light what had happened. For example, I was approached by a young man in the film department over 50 years ago, and I incorporated that in the novel where my character Ryan just gets off the bus from Philadelphia, and 3 days on the bus. It's quite a miserable ride. I've done these bus rides, by the way. And he's, confronted with his being attracted to another man, and that's so appalling to him. And this actually happened to me. So it was like, oh, yeah, how hard could that be? On the other hand, the main character, one of the main characters, Sean himself, didn't know that he was gay.
Hmm.
And that was a phenomenon that I discovered with the Seattle Gay Men's Association, that many men weren't aware or willing to admit that they were gay. And so the idea that Sean didn't realize that he was a queer man after all, um, is real. And
Yeah.
the fact that his son would be so repulsed by that is also real in the experience of men that I listened to in Seattle.
So you mentioned how it was cathartic, and just going back to the emotion just for a second here.
Hmm.
In what ways? Could you elaborate about that a little bit more?
Um,
And the reason I'm asking, just to
yeah,
preface this, the reason I'm asking is I've talked to a couple people that are also members of Redwood Writers who have a story, but they're not sure exactly how to do it. They don't know if they want to fictionalize a memoir or if they want to write the true memoir. So a
yeah.
big you know me, you've read my books. The personal growth space is all about tapping
Yeah.
into that level and being bold enough to take a look in the mirror. But from a cathartic standpoint, when we face those fears, there's a cathartic thing that happens. But what was it for you that gave you the courage, albeit it's fictionalized, but what was the cathartic change, the transformation that happened when you gave breath to these characters? What did it feel like?
Mhm. It's the same feeling that you get in a good film where you see the characters um, come through their challenges and succeed in accomplishing the goal. When I wrote my first screenplay, it was my uh, first effort and well received at state. Essentially, it was my dad's story as a rancher and his son who goes off to, fight uh, for the freedom of France in World War II. It was revisiting my dad. So, okay, did it have to do with my life? It had to do with the fact that my dad had died just a couple years, 2 years before I wrote that. And then the second screenplay was my mom's life story. So I cried my way through that one too. So it's just recounting your life, but in a safe environment.
And that's where the healing happens. I mean, a lot of people will just write private
Hmm.
journals, Curtis, or they will, do workbooks, various workbooks to try and get down to some of the root causes and conditions. And it's like this giant onion that we're peeling back these layers, but you don't know the other side of what that potential joy is until we're willing to face the tears of peeling back those onion layers and cry our eyes out a little bit. But when you get
Uh,
there, and I'm speaking from my own experience, but you've shared
yeah,
some of this with me outside of this podcast, is it's incredibly liberating because you feel this it's so in some cases it may be a euphoric feeling, in others it may just be a like, oh my God, I don't have to carry around that bag of crap forever any longer
yeah.
because I've now had a vehicle and a way to put this out there in the world. So yeah, go ahead. Do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, it's also being willing to discover. For example, um, in coming home from SF State to my apartment in downtown San Francisco, just off Market, I was on the F streetcar, and my clever little bag that I had gotten at the school, it's a bag that you can fold up, and I put a $20 bill in there and a note saying, if found, please call me. Well, it didn't cost $20, but for some reason I thought it was important and unique, and I wanted it back. Well, the backpack I had fell forward when the streetcar lurched. That became part of the novel, where my character Ryan, on his bus trip, his bag falls forward on the Greyhound and he
Remember
loses
that.
his phone.
I remember that.
And that it was from just that real event for me. Well, 2 days later, I get a call from a gentleman named Curtis, actually, um, puzzling to me. And he said, my friend, Whiskey Bill, found this, and, we're calling to return it to you. And so I met at SRO, a single resident occupancy. It's a hotel San Francisco owns in order to keep homeless people off the street. So I got to meet Whiskey Bill.
Oh,
And all of that is very nicely documented in the novel. Um, and then he said, I'd really rather not live in this hotel. I'd rather live in Golden Gate Park. Well, he's not the first homeless person that I've met who expressed annoyance with having to comply with
mm-hmm.
city policies, whether it's in San Diego or Seattle or obviously San Francisco. So he became the impetus for the entire novel,
No
Whiskey
kidding.
Bill. And And so what I'm getting at here is be willing to explore things that who knows where they're going to lead.
And also pay attention. I mean, I know Anne Lamott intimately, and I got to watch her taking notes for all of her books, and it's like, oh my God, it's so obsessive. But it's like you don't know where the little nuggets are going to happen or where they're going to lead, and you're so worried that you might lose them that, there's this little thing called a phone. I use it all the time to say, "Hey Siri, take a note." No, not now. Anyway, write it down because then it's out of here and then it's down there. And sometimes you leave these things
Yeah.
and then you come back to them as you may have done too, where you scribble these things down and then you're like, as writers, we always get stuck. I don't know if you get stuck. I get stuck. And it's like, so I'll go back through some old journals and I'll start going, oh shit. I've been thinking about this for a long time. It's in my subconscious. I just haven't
Yeah.
brought it up into the conscious to figure out how to manage and manipulate it or turn it into a story. So let's change the focus from your book, Lost and Found, for a second, and let's
Yeah.
talk to directly, you and I, have a little conversation about encouragement for those people who have the stories in them that have some shit that they need to deal with that they haven't addressed, and how you, as a first-time author as well, with another book on the way, can help encourage them to get out there and just tell the story, whether they publish it or not. What would you say to them?
Right. Any silly, stupid thing that comes to mind, even if it's, I don't feel like writing today. And if you prefer typing or, actually using hands to put pen to paper, just start with something. Just, I'll call it drivel, because it's more like doing some basic calisthenics or basic
Mhm.
weight lifting. And then of course you're going to throw that aside, but it's just warming up to the physical process of writing something. And and Sean has taken me to task on this one. Don't hit for perfection, just get something down. So we don't want to edit before we even have a few pages to review. So get something going, worry about cleaning it up later.
And to that end too, because for anybody who's a perfectionist, and most creatives are perfectionists to a fault, myself included, like Curtis just said, get it down, but also know that by getting it down, it's like a journal. You can almost treat the story like a journal in the beginning, and then you go back and edit. But the thing that you just mentioned
Mhm.
is a good reminder to me too, is I feel sometimes that I'm worried about, is this the right way to say it? Is it the right words? And if you
Yeah.
start trying to wear two hats as an author of editor or author and editor at the same time, or author, editor, and marketer, it'll drive you bonkers. So
Yes.
my free prize inside is put the hat on at the best time of day that works for you and nurture and honor that time. If it's writing 500 words a day and just getting dribbled out, as Curtis said, great. And when it comes time to start editing after you've done the shitty first pre-draft, not the shitty first draft, the pre-draft,
Thank
that's
you.
the garbage, that's a dribble. Then you got to
Yeah.
massage it. And before you can start thinking about marketing as you go along, but keep the right hat on, right? Keep the right hat on for the task that you're doing at the time. You can't, some people will try and eat a cheeseburger and drink a milkshake while they're driving in rush hour traffic, and that's not always the smartest thing. So there's a metaphor that we can all relate to,
Yeah.
but I want to change gears because I promise you we do this. You're part-time at Oliver's, you're in the wellness department, and this is going to tie into what we're talking about here, but from the creative mindset perspective of nurturing your work and honoring yourself to write and get this stuff out, there are three or four other elements. There's mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, etc., and a tactile.
Mhm.
From a wellness perspective, what else do you suggest from a health and wellness perspective, either physically or mentally, that are some practices that you know and also some knowledge that you have because you've been in this industry as a business owner long before you became an author. And I want you to have a chance to
Mhm.
talk to that because you, in my opinion, that's another reason I had you on the show. You're an expert. You've been in the wellness industry for a long time, and here's an opportunity to share some of that insight with other people.
And before the internet,
Right?
and let's see, going back, let's see, it would be at least 54 years. But even in high school in the seminary, I was learning about nutrition and how I could help control my acne by not eating sugar. And so, like, oh, okay. But having stumbled across a natural food store in San Francisco way back in the summer of love, way back then. Um, it became such a passion that I created a natural food store up in Seattle. And I called it my walk-through movie. Well, it was a set to be attractive to people, to let them discover natural foods before we even heard the word organic as
Hmm.
applied to quality food. So I've been doing that for some time now, working at Oliver's at the Montecito store just 3 days a week means that I can have that balance between doing my other creative work and working with customers whom I generally appreciate and love them, even when sometimes they're kind of ornery,
Hmm.
because they're in pain. They're challenged with issues. And I engage with them in what their life is about. And by so doing, I can tailor the supplement that would be more appropriate for them. So many of our customers now use the internet for getting insights and information. I use Chat GPT, but you have to be very careful about that. We might even circle back to that on how it can be helpful or stupid. Either way, I like to have my customers empowered to make sense out of the doctors and promotional organizations that they'll find, if they're watching a podcast and then there's an ad that pops up and oh my
Right.
goodness, I can't eat tomatoes anymore, whatever. So it's my job, I see, to help people uh, get the best value for their supplement dollars and realize that a brick and mortar store actually provides not only competitive prices, or they won't buy it, they'll buy it on Amazon. And
Hmm.
so it's my goal to help them sort through the options that they have. And like I said, only 3 days a week. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm glad you shared that and you did it very succinctly too, which is it's nice because in this life that we have and the time that we have on this planet, we are
Mhm.
not one-dimensional human beings. We are living, breathing, spiritual beings, and a big part of our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health is predicated on maintaining not only what we eat and supplement, but also the sleep and all the stuff that we can have. I'm probably have some psychologists on here later, but there's a lot that goes into it, and you get to have that firsthand, tactile, tangible experience of being a steward of the knowledge that you have to help somebody else. And
Yeah.
to me, it's a noble cause, Curtis, that if we're giving back what we have and the knowledge and skills and experience we have, whether it's as authors and or as a nutrition expert or a self-development expert or whatever the case may be,
You said steward. I like that. That's what
because
I see myself.
we are stewards, in our own way. We get to bring our own personal experiences and knowledge to the table. But the other important part of this is, as it is to go back to writing for a second, is understanding our audience, right? We have
Hmm.
to understand who this book is for. And we're going to put a bow on this. But when you came to share your book with me and I read it, and you just asked me, I don't remember exactly how it happened. We were talking about where to get it. You had read one of my workbooks and you found the courage to actually go walk into Barnes and Noble and get it in the right shelf. And I would like you to just share that experience a little bit because this is the part of being an author. There's the writing and creative part, There's a mental, environmental, physical, spiritual aspect. But for a lot of authors, they don't put on the third hat, which is the marketing hat. And you did that. You were bold enough, and I wanted it to come from you as to what exactly you did.
I walked into Barnes and Noble with my book and said, um, "This is my first novel, and who could I show this book to?" And they said, okay. And nothing happened. So I went in a few weeks later, and that's the key. I
You
showed
didn't
up
give up.
again. I showed up again. And the book did manage to get into the hands of one of the staff who does select books. And he read the book. And I thought because Sean is a gay man, that they put it in the
Not
gay
me as a
section.
guy in the book, but that's okay. Just
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he spells it Sean. So, uh, yeah, so the surprise for me was where they chose to stock the book, which is in family strategies. I thought, well, how about that? And indeed, that's what the book is about. It's about people overcoming their biases. In this case, the son is biased against his father because he discovers that he's gay. And also, he's overcoming the resentments against his mother, who was really a very ineffective mom. And yet she's in a recovery process. And so by the very last page of the book, you don't know if he's going to, shall we say, forgive his mom, or at least in the sense of allow her the uh, opportunity to let him be in her life again. And you can find about that later. And book two picks up where that ends. And that's because I was willing to show up at Barnes and Noble.
Mhm.
I brought the book to other stores. In my experience, it's best to just give them a book rather than have it on consignment. It depends on the store. Um, the point is you want people to see what it's about and put it in the right place. And in this case, and Barnes and Noble did a nice job.
And there's a lot to that. I learned something out of it because I normally would think, okay, here's where I think this belongs based on the research that I did, to go back to what we're talking about with some
Yep.
customers that come in with a head full of knowledge because they ran a Google search on why they need probiotics or not. It's just to use a loose general term.
Yep.
And you didn't do that. You just gave it to them and let them decide, because technically they know their store and they know where it's going to
Oh
go,
yeah.
and they have a vested interest in wanting the book to sell if they're going to pick up more copies. So I thought that was a dynamite story. I went down there and saw it personally, and I was kind of blown away at how they had created this whole separate. They changed the term from self-help to personal development, and it's got its own niche on the shelf in Santa Rosa right there, and you can't not see it. So I just think that there's a lot that we covered in this brief 45 minutes, Curtis, and it's just phenomenal to hear the stories of people who follow their gut, trust their gut, and put in the time and energy and effort to actually write a book, go through the hassle of having it edited and published, and all the fear and all that. We can talk for
Yeah.
4 hours about that stuff, but to
Hmm.
bring it all the way full circle to having it on a bookshelf. And did they give you an opportunity to have an author signing there too?
Yes. They chose to have it on June 1st, and that was quite fun. I think I included a photo that was shot there at Barnes and
That's,
Noble.
that's awesome. Make sure
So,
you send me that photo when we publish this, because I'll throw it on the
oh, okay.
notes.
Oh, and by the way, the creation of the audiobook meant interviewing actors who could do the narration. And I am so pleased with how they brought my characters to life. I visualize it as a Netflix series, and hearing, I almost said seeing, um, the way that it's all presented. It's very touching. And some people prefer, paper, read a book, or digital version. And there are others who would, prepare and prefer to just hear the story. And
Sure.
so it's available in all formats.
That's awesome. So make sure I get all those links before we broadcast this out to the world because I want people to be able to find
Okay.
you. We're going to give them a chance to do that too.
Yeah.
And also
It's
just
all on my website,
go ahead and give us that website right now.
the www.jcurtismoran.com.
And it's moran.com.
Right.
And, Curtis, this has been a true delight. I am so appreciative that we took a few minutes out of your day to do this episode. And hopefully, the show's starting to take off. There's people that are listening to it and getting value out of it. And as that happens with everything, us having this moment together to share some
Thank you.
of our experience stays out there for a long time. So, thank you for being bold and brave enough to do the show and share a little bit of insight.
And any of your readers and viewers and others that come to your platform, if they want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to respond with them directly.
And they can do that through your website, right?
They can do it that way or through your links, however
Awesome.
convenient for them.
Awesome. Well, folks, once again, this has been a Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You. We've been visiting with J. Curtis Moran. He goes by Curtis, author of Lost and Found, Coming of Age, Coming Clean. And it's just been a delight. So thank you so much for being on the show. And if you like the show, share it with other people because it's a lot better if you share stuff than keeping it to yourself. So this has been Dare to Be Great, Dare to Be You. I'm your host, Sean Langwell. Until next time, make it a great day.